If you're watching this, it means you didn't get blown away. Wind's for real. It got the best of an interstate, an army post, and a landmark building. We finally know what caused a fatal ski lift accident, and it was the nightmare of anyone who's scared to ride those things. Denver's new district attorney makes a life or death decision.
Are we done with the death penalty now in Denver?
Drivers determined to outsmart ski traffic make a detour and end up needing the kindness of Coloradans to make it home. We drive out to the Eastern Plains to meet a woman who watches television like it's her job. Because it is. And Christmas is just getting started for those who enjoy the piney tang of leftover Christmas trees.
It's got to be about the flavor, man. I guess it's, they're kind of foodies when it comes to trees.
Sit back, grab a snack. Just take the ornaments off first. This is next. How windy does it have to be for the wind to be big news? Well, this wind whipped Denver in the morning, still had enough left over to shut down southern Colorado this afternoon. 16 semis blew over in 100-mile-per-hour winds south of Monument. Then troopers came in and shut down the interstate clear to New Mexico. The well-known Pioneers Museum in the Springs was evacuated due to severe damage to the roof. Deputies cleared nearby streets so that people wouldn't get beamed by flying pieces of the building. Fort Carson told its soldiers and families just to stay inside and avoid their windows. It's ice that is the issue from this storm on the western slope, and when rain on this side of the divide turns to snow, I-70 will be even more miserable to drive tonight. The weather forecast, for all of us who don't blow away in the meantime, is coming up. The ski lift accident report released late this afternoon confirms it was not that family's fault. The woman who died up at Granby Ranch and her 2 kids, they did not do anything wrong to cause the fall that killed her and injured them. State regulators say it was an electrical issue that caused the lift to swing their chair into a tower, throwing them off from a height of 25 feet. The state will allow Ski Granby Ranch to reopen that particular lift if it shuts off the electrical system and uses a diesel system instead. The detailed report also opens up the possibility of a lawsuit by the family of Kelly Huber of Texas, because it's clear now that it was a lift malfunction instead of the much more common issue in ski lift falls, rider error. Let's talk lessons learned from the 2 water rescues over the weekend at Wash Park. Dogs ended up in icy ponds. In one case, 2 people went in after the dog. Denver firefighters did some great work getting all of them out okay. In one situation, though, not before a 911 call taker refused to send help. That was a violation of city rules. And trust me, that call taker is going to learn his lesson. He'll be retrained before his next shift. Reminded that the proper procedure in Denver is to forward those calls to Denver fire dispatchers, who will then send firefighters out to rescue a dog in the water. But how about the lesson learned for the rest of us? When will we learn that Denver's leash law isn't optional? Not for well-trained dogs or attentive owners, not optional if there aren't other people around, and not optional just for a little while. Because it only takes 1 second and then squirrel.
But obviously dogs can get away from you quickly, so it's easy to lose control quickly.
Park Montague is new to town, not new to life.
I think it's just smart to know the laws, leash laws and all that, and make sure you keep an eye on your own dog and hopefully others if you can help it.
Denver firefighters will not ask if your dog was illegally off leash. They won't ask if your dog was under voice control until just before it saw that squirrel or those geese. Firefighters, they'll just go in after your pet. And if they're on that call, then they're not available for another call, possibly one involving people.
It's a lot of resources that are being put out there to help people when they should just keep their dogs on a leash, and you wouldn't have these issues with their dogs getting stuck in the water or people going in after their dogs and risking their own lives.
The city doesn't charge pet owners for these rescues. In lieu of a bill, they're just begging for a little common sense compliance with the leash law.
Don't know why people do that. I mean, they should just keep their dogs on a leash and we wouldn't have these problems.
The fine for having a dog off leash in Denver is $80, and the possible cost, as we saw this weekend for those people and those firefighters, well, the cost could potentially be measured in lives. The most Colorado thing we saw today are all the people who thought that they could beat ski traffic on I-70 this weekend by following their GPS up and over a mountain near Idaho Springs. But Google said it would be faster. Well, Google doesn't know that you only have 2-wheel drive, and Google is not aware that Squaw Pass can be challenging even for vehicles with 4-wheel drive. The Whitaker family lives up there. Robin and Jeremy told us they spent much of this past weekend pushing cars stuck on their hill. Guy from California even knocked on their door after dark and asked for help after he ran off the road. The Whitakers say they are happy to help people, but they asked us to pass along a tip. The GPS doesn't know everything.
You know, I think what's happening is that Google is giving people alternate routes, which is great. However, our roads up here are really four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive only. In the winter, it gets really slick and kind of crazy, and it's very steep. And so I think what ended up happening is, you know, we were making breakfast and we saw like 6 or 7 cars go by, and that's like a week's worth of cars for us up here. So we all of a sudden just had to, you know, we kind of went outside and all of the streets around here were completely jammed up with cars. If you don't know the area, it looks like a valid route. I think sometimes it's just better to wait it out on the highway.
Robin says the worst is when people decide that their GPS gives them magic powers to drive down that road, County Road 155, which clearly is not maintained or plowed in the winter. That's Robin's sign that she threw up in front of it, warning drivers, saying, "Google and Siri are drunk. Go this way." She's a good neighbor. Your latest, not-so-subtle reminder to move over for emergency vehicles is this mangled CSP cruiser on I-70 today. Trooper was taken to the hospital with minor injuries after an out-of-control driver slammed into her vehicle while she was stopped by the side of the road helping people. This happened in the westbound lanes near Rifle. We have shared similar stories that have cost troopers their lives, so please just move over. Denver is done with the death penalty. It dies as District Attorney Mitch Morrissey leaves office tomorrow. His successor, Beth McCann, sat down with me today and said that she will make good on her campaign promise to remove our city from the list of the few remaining judicial districts in Colorado that still seek capital punishment.
Are we done with the death penalty now in Denver?
We are under my administration. I'm not going to bring the death penalty.
What message do you hope that sends?
Well, couple. One, I don't think that the state should be in the business of killing people. I believe that a life without the possibility of parole, life in prison, it gets to the punishment piece, but it also doesn't cost the taxpayers those millions and millions of dollars that could be used to prosecute other cases.
What message do you think it sends to criminals?
You know, that's an interesting question. I think people who are committing the kinds of crimes that you would even think about a death penalty, that it isn't an impact for them. I don't think it's going to change the mindset of someone who is determined to commit a heinous crime.
Soon-to-be DA McCann says she's not looking to lead any kind of statewide repeal of the death penalty. She says she'd support that happening, though, either as a voter referendum on the issue or repeal through the state legislature. Tomorrow, McCann and I discuss how she plans to handle prosecution of police officers accused of breaking the law, and also how her work as a gun control advocate will impact how she prosecutes gun crime in Denver. I have been informed that Next is occasionally on in bars. So attention people watching in bars, you are probably not hearing my voice, you're just seeing the closed captioning at the bottom of the screen. Did you know it's not computer generated? Those words are the fine work of a real live human, like the woman in eastern Colorado who watches TV like it's her job. Steve Steger has her story.
The small town of Lyman, Colorado, connected to the rest of the country through the interstate that forms its northern border. Connected to the world.
Right. Who would have thought?
Through the small home office of Stacy Potenza and her funny-looking keyboard.
I don't think outside of a few close friends in Lyman, anybody even in my town understands how it works.
You probably don't know much about closed captioning either.
Live TV, like news, sporting events, conferences, anything that's live. Chances are it's somebody like me sitting at home in their pajamas.
Stacy opted out of the pajama look for our interview, and while we were there, she wasn't doing the TV gig. Instead, she was captioning for a student in a classroom at CU.
I'm going to pull up my cheat sheets for the class.
Don't ask us what kind of class it was.
O is necessary for H. H isn't necessary for O.
We didn't really understand what was going on. Stacy, however, did.
I also love getting to be a perpetual student, getting to learn something new, whether it's through classes or even newscasts and specialty shows across the United States.
She probably learns a lot from TV, too.
With TV, a lot of the times it goes in my ears and out my fingers.
Well, there goes my job security.
If I'm watching TV and not working, I tend to absorb a lot more.
Whew. Job security secured. Now, that professor talks fast. How on earth does she keep up?
Well, we have to be certified at 225 words a minute. The average single speaker rate of speech is around 180 words a minute.
You might think technology would be threatening her job. After all, that Siri is getting pretty good.
She's pretty good, though. Anybody who has an iPhone and talks to Siri knows how frustrating it can be to try to get her to hear exactly what you're saying.
That makes sense. All right, let's test her listening skills by making her listen to someone who's pretty tough to listen to. Kyle Clark.
If we asked you for pictures of springtime, would you really send us a photo of your skis in a closet? Yes. Everyone is impressed you have a 4-piece set. We saw it at Costco, too. Chair covers? Somebody got a raise.
Not bad, Stacy. Not bad. For next, I'm Steve Steger.
A shout out to whomever, wherever, is closed captioning this very program right now. If you know of someone who does a job that people don't know is a job, you know what I mean. Let us know. Email next@9news.com or get our attention anytime with the hashtag HeyNext. If wind wasn't our weather story today, we'd be talking about ice on the western slope, the avalanches in southwest Colorado, or what the forecast calls for tonight on the Front Range. That's next. Along with nearly a century's worth of memories from Colorado's oldest Italian restaurant before it closes. And speaking of delicious, how do you recycle your Christmas tree?
It gives the tree another purpose, and it sure does make the goats happy.
Dangerous, damaging winds finally easing tonight in downtown Denver on this Monday evening. I'm meteorologist Kathy Sabin. Tracking winds today anywhere from 60 to 100 miles per hour along the Front Range. And we have had reports of amazing damage from this wind event, which appears to be over now as we're tracking a low pressure area that is moving east of the area and the pressure gradient beginning to ease. Still some areas of blowing snow for those of you that are headed up over some of the higher passes. And while the wind will return to the foothill areas tomorrow, it will not be to the extent that we saw today. High wind warning canceled for Denver, continues for Colorado Springs down to the New Mexico line. And we're monitoring a bit of snow up around Winter Park and Breckenridge. We'll be measuring the snow in feet up there tomorrow as winter storm warnings remain in effect for additional accumulation and dangerous driving conditions due to the blowing snow that we have seen over many of the mountain passes and on I-70 for much of the day. A calmer evening in Denver tonight, a dry day tomorrow, a nice midweek warming trend ahead of the next storm system and the next chance for snow. In the metro area tonight, temperatures will be very mild for this time of year. 31 in Denver, 37 in Pueblo, with teens in the high country. Slowly decreasing wind overnight, but it will not be entirely calm tomorrow. The winds will pick up west of I-25, but we do not expect any wind warnings to be posted as a result. Temperatures warm midweek. We have a chance for flurries on Thursday and Friday with a little bit of a cooling trend heading into next weekend. And just a beautiful day if you can manage it to be outdoors today. And at least somebody looked like they were having fun out there.
Kathy, thanks. The stock show starts, so it's time to take down your Christmas tree. I haven't done mine either, so no rush. If you can't figure out what to do with it, photojournalist Ann Herbst has an idea.
You know, there's a saying in Chaffee County, now this is Colorado, and I think there's a lot to that.
If there really is such a thing as a winter wonderland,
these peaks will just take your breath away.
Chaffee County just might be it.
This would be it, wouldn't it? It's got that total essence about it.
But as lovely as it is, these goats aren't so sure they want to walk in it.
So they're probably not willing to stand in the wind too long.
Don Jump owns Jumpin' Good Goat Dairy in Buena Vista.
It's still below zero wind chill for sure. Yeah, it's a pretty dicey day.
But Don knows there's one thing that'll convince them to brave the cold. Christmas leftovers.
Christmas trees is high on their list of a good snack.
Donations come from all over Don's community.
Come on, mamas. Look!
becoming snacks, refining the palates of these pine tree connoisseurs.
It's got to be about the flavor, man. I guess it's, you know, they're kind of foodies when it comes to trees. I think they like the Douglas fir the best, but they're a little slower on the spruce, you see.
Eventually, no matter the tree,
This is really what's left.
all of their plates are cleaned.
Pretty funny.
The goats get some extra fiber and vitamins,
It's high in vitamin C.
and Dawn's neighbors get a way to extend the good cheer and warmth of the season.
I think it's a little bit sad after Christmas is over and you're trying to figure out what to do with the tree. So if you can haul it out here and give it to the goats, one more way to feel good about Christmas, I think.
For next,
Recycle, repurpose,
this is Ann Herbst.
re-goat.
Ask your neighbors, you going to re-goat that tree? Dawn says she doesn't feed trees to the goats that have been sprayed. She checks them for the stray ornaments, obviously, and she says that these are snacks, not meals. Everything, even Christmas trees, eat in moderation.
Next, in defense of good news, a passionate plea to highlight compassion in our community, even if crime makes for a better headline. And generations of Coloradans remember their connections to the state's oldest Italian restaurant as it prepares to serve its final meals.
Last night we told you about the coming end for Colorado's oldest Italian restaurant. Then you told us what the Blue Parrot in Louisville has meant to you for 98 years.
Lisa Corey wrote, "The Blue Parrot was my first job in 1977. She says, I come from Idaho to visit family and always take enough home." Paula Burkhart told us, "I grew up in Louisville and the Blue Parrot's truly an icon. It's a huge part of our family history. I guess times change. We have to move on. But the Blue Parrot will be truly missed." Kim Stubbs writes from Arkansas to say, "As an ex-employee, the stories of the hundreds of kids who have worked at the Parrot over the years would be fabulous." Judy said, "One of our first dates was at the Blue Parrot back in 1966. We'll be married 50 years in August, and it's still our favorite place to go for dates."
Chuck Rosansky is a legend in the comic book world. He's the owner and founder of Mile High Comics. Chuck is also passionate about helping the needy in our city, and he is convinced, like we are, that good news is news too.
Well, let me tell you a story. On Christmas Day, I still had some food left over from when we went out with Feeding Denver's Hungry. So I spent 2 hours that night driving the back alleys in the dark by myself, looking for where people were huddled up and taking shelter wherever they could in some of the sketchiest sections of town that you can imagine. But you know what? If you fall through the social safety net and you're living on the street, you have no damn choice but to live in that environment, in that world. So if I'm going to help you, I don't need an organization. I just need the courage to go out there into that madness and to try and seek you out and to try and bring you food. There is not enough publicity in the world to pay somebody to do that. But I did that on Christmas, and that's how I chose to spend my Christmas. And I helped a whole bunch of people, and I finally, when I ran out of food, I cried. So that's the story.
And that is news too. A few of you would like to be heard on the leash law situation. I'll quickly read a few next, but not so quickly that our closed captioner can't keep up. A lot of you talking about the leash law situation. Mike and Brenda Patrick say, "I've determined the dog owners think the leash law means your dog should be on a leash." Sean, Jeffco Open Space Ranger, writes, "Thank you for your commentary. Well said." Stacy Cummings, glad you brought it up. Haley, though, says, "Every time you said squirrel, my dog ran around barking looking for one." Very sorry about that, Haley. Squirrel.